Hello, podcast listener. Thank you for tuning in to JJ Meets World. We've got a great episode with Andrew Jason on here. I guess if they were a bad episode, I wouldn't start off by saying they're a bad episode. But you can be rest assured that I am being truthful, that these are, in fact, good episodes, all of them together. Hey, speaking of good episodes, Tucker and I have some real yuck laugh-em-ups that take place in our intro. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World with our special guest, Andrew Jason. And hey, why don't you add this to the notes in your phone? Patreon.com/JJ Meets World. It's a great place to go and donate to our amazing podcast. I'm going to shut up now and let you listen.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
When I was in second grade, my teacher, who is the only teacher I ever think I can say I disliked wholly, Mrs. C is what we'll call her. Mrs. C diagnosed me as having a reading disability. And so I was put in a special reading class that had to meet after school. And it was stuff like, see how the B, it looks like a stick with a circle? It's like a bat. And the ball comes to meet the bat. And I was like, I know the difference between a B and a D. And the other kids who were placed in this special reading program went on to become very, very successful in academics, not only in elementary school, but high school. And I always think to myself, I wonder what happened to that woman, because she was also the first teacher who ever called me a liar because I said you can drink too much water. And she was like, no, water is important and it's the rest of life. I remember that was the moment where the crack in the armor showed, where I was like, oh, teachers don't know everything.
Right. Are you sure that you weren't in an advanced placement reading class?
No.
You weren't in like junior great books or something?
No, because then the next year, my teacher said, why are you in this program?
Okay.
And in first grade, my first grade teacher was like, JJ loves to read. He's reading all the time. And then in third grade, she's like, you don't need to be a part of this this program.
So you just had a bad teacher.
I had a horrible teacher.
Wow.
And while I think a lot of teachers do it because they're passionate, this woman at this point was just waiting for retirement.
She was in it for the money?
Yeah. She was waiting. Her husband told her that you have to do something during the day. And so she became a teacher. And
right,
she was
this job
really,
as a second grader until a second grade teacher until I can retire.
She was old. She was old when I was in second grade. And this would have been 26 years ago. But just an unlikable woman.
So no way she's alive now.
I mean, she could be.
Could be. Maybe she's our only 100-year-old listener.
And she's like, I always thought she liked me.
I loved my second grade teacher, Mrs. Mund. Shout out to Mrs. Mund. You're awesome.
See, I wish I had an awesome second grade teacher. She also did not like art projects.
Ugh.
It's like second grade's the best time for art.
Yeah, that's dumb. I'm sorry you had a bad teacher, JJ.
Thank you. My love of reading has, she almost squashed it a little bit.
Really?
And so I stopped reading things like Lyle the Crocodile. And it just goes to show how important it is when you have someone to nurture that love of education, whether it's in science, it's in reading, history, what have you. And I think that's a good lead into our guest today, because our guest, Andrew Jason, is in the publishing world. And he's a part of a company that is creating engaging things to read and to look at and to explore. It's almost like opening one of his magazines is almost like watching an episode of Wishbone, because Wishbone used to get you excited and give you the taste of some of these great works. I remember wanting to go read this Tale of King Midas after I saw the Wishbone episode.
Did you have magazine subscriptions as a kid?
No.
Oh, I had Ranger Rick and I had Highlights. And those were both two awesome kids magazines I was really big into. It's too bad you didn't have that's sad. That's actually make me feel kind of sad that you didn't have a magazine subscription as a kid.
You know what I wanted? Do you remember those? There were ads for a magazine that was like Animal Life. And it was all about animals, and every magazine was just animals, animals, animals. And then when I couldn't get that, but I had almost all the Goosebump books.
Okay.
By the time I got old enough where that was a thing, where you could get junior novels.
Mm-hmm.
And my dream is to collect all of the Goosebump books again as an adult and display them in my office, because I feel like that's a really good talking point, don't you?
Yeah.
People would get behind that.
I think I would do Encyclopedia Brown.
Ooh.
I was big into the Encyclopedia Brown books, big time.
I had a elementary school librarian who turned me onto a book called Mr. Pudgeon's. That was sort of like a Mary Poppins.
Male Mary Poppins. Yeah, you talked about it on the podcast before.
I just found it. They just reissued it. And so I'm very excited to read that. Just as excited as fourth grade JJ was.
So are you fingers crossed for a Mr. Pudgeon's crossover with Mary Poppins?
They're different eras. So Mr. Pudgeon's was in the 1950s.
Yeah, but my read on Mary Poppins is that she's an eternal creature, right? So she's as young now in the new movie, where 20 years have passed, and she's as young as she was before. So it seems like you could do even a modern day one, and it would still be the same Mary Poppins, same age.
My problem here is you'd have to make a Mr. Pudgeon's movie that leads into a Mary Poppins movie, and I don't want him to just get thrown into a Mary Poppins
There are already
vehicle.
2 Mary Poppins movies, though. So we'd just need to get that Mr. Pudgeon's one out to create that shared universe. Is he eternal the way she is?
I kind of imagine so.
Okay.
But he smokes cigars, so I don't know. Lung cancer may
She
claim
would
him.
not approve of that.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Although she probably, I imagine Mary Poppins puts a lot of salt on stuff.
Is Lin-Manuel playing Bert?
No, he is not.
It's a different guy.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
He's playing like a Doug or a Kurt.
Gotcha.
More on this as Mary Poppins Returns comes out in months from now, or is already on, I guess, whatever medium you're watching movies on, if you're listening to this in the future. Sit back, relax. Andrew Jason is our guest today. And speaking of guest, we'd love it if you had a guest spot on the website, patreon.com/JJMeetsWorld. And you can go there and you can talk about all sorts of interesting things, and then maybe give us a little bit of money because you didn't have to pay anything for this. So the price is right for you. But it would sure be nice if we got something on the flip side.
We would greatly appreciate it, even as little as $1 a month can go a long way to help support the show. Keep it going.
That's right. I need chapstick.
JJ Meets World.
Andrew Jason, welcome to the JJ Meets World studios.
Thanks for having me. Long-time listener, first-time participant.
You were maybe the first person outside of my direct sphere of influence who told me, hey, I just listened to this episode and I really enjoyed it. And I thought, oh man, maybe this thing's going to work.
It's true. I was just listening to Cat Licks this morning.
Were you?
I was, yeah.
I like that one.
That was a good one.
Last time I saw you, you were jogging by the RDO building, and I thought, what, does he think he's better than me? So
The whole time just, oh, God. I know
Yeah.
JD's not doing this
gotta
right
beat
now.
him.
Yeah.
Gotta beat him.
I'm so much better than that guy.
I was honestly probably listening to your podcast while jogging.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
It's a
so-
good joggable podcast. And you just got married. Congratulations.
Thank you very
Congrats.
much.
How was it?
It was fantastic. Yours is next weekend.
It is.
It's the quickest day of your life. I will tell you that.
Good.
So-
Probably one of the more expensive ones.
Yeah, and that too. Yeah. No, everybody said I do though. Nobody got super drunk, so I say it's a win-win.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You've won the battle just by showing up.
Exactly.
I haven't second thought getting married the whole time, but I've had second thoughts about the wedding just in general because I feel like I want to impress so many people with my artistic choices. But when it boils down to it, a meatball is a meatball, and I could do something to really flash it up a little bit. But are people going to notice that? Or are they going to be
Yeah.
like, "This is a good meatball"?
That is a fair point. I think the things that if I had to give any advice, I would say that the things that Caitlin, my wife, and I are most proud of would be like the little personal touches that we, put into the wedding. Like we had my mom's cousin play all the music at the wedding, and she played at the reception too. And we spent thousands of dollars on flowers, and I don't remember what the flowers look like. So, keep that in mind.
We
Take a picture of the flowers.
Yeah, right.
we jarred 300 teeny tiny jars of pickles.
Oh my.
Because Jill and I can every year, so we
Oh,
thought this
that's
would
cool.
be something nice. And hindsight's 2020. We could have just done like five 5-gallon buckets
Oh,
worth
yeah.
and then put those into smaller jars later. But we actually can them and process them so people could keep them for up to a year. And then we
Wow.
put stickers on them and twine. And at the end of the night, I was like, Jill, maybe a third of the people are actually going to take these.
I don't
and then
like
we're gonna
pickles, JJ. Is there an option for me?
There is not. You're screwed. So for the next 3 years, we'll be eating wedding pickles with every meal.
I thought it was only good for a year. You're gonna go past that?
Well, I mean, I think most people think you just get rid of it after a year because
Okay.
if you haven't eaten it by that point, I have a bottle of wine from a wedding I attended. It was like, congratulations, Kurt and Stacy, and it's from 2012, and I finally just tossed it a little while ago because I was like, I don't want to drink this wine. It looks bad. It's got
bad you
stuff
couldn't-
floating in it.
It's too bad you
Yeah.
couldn't find like a ship to christen it with or something.
I've always dreamt about doing that. That's
bad-
something from movies I've never
Should have done
done.
that to this podcast studio. Just smashed big old
We can do that
bottle
now.
of champagne.
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's find some wine. Yeah.
Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? How'd you get into publishing?
Yeah. Well, first off, it's kind of weird because I'm looking over your shoulder and seeing a picture of myself hanging up on your
Yeah,
wall.
right?
So, but no, I'm from Poposky, Minnesota.
Paposky.
Paposky.
Never even heard that before.
And nobody has. I think the population is like 6.
How do you spell that?
Puposky.
Wow, it's not even how I pictured it in my head. to
I
spell
know.
it.
I know.
AH is what I was thinking.
Yeah, right. So it's kind of by Bemidji.
Okay.
I went to school in Black Duck, Minnesota. Came to school at MSUM for journalism and Spanish, and realized there's not much of a market for Spanish in Fargo, North Dakota. But then I started off interning at this little tiny magazine called FM Spotlight. That was all about city and nightlife, all that fun stuff, and have just kind of been persistent and diligent and stuck out all through the hard times. And now we're Spotlight Media. We do Fargo Monthly, Bison Illustrated, Design and Living, Fargo Inc., Fighting Hawks Magazine, Fargo by Fargo. We have about 6 different magazines. We're expanding into almost a full creative agency. So we're doing a lot of digital marketing and like website creation and stuff like that. So
And podcasting, too,
and
I saw.
podcasting. Yes, Bison Illustrated does have a podcast. Maybe someday we'll buy out JJ Meets World and bring it under our umbrella for millions.
That's the plan.
That's the whole plan. Was that
Yeah.
make podcast, get Fargo Monthly to buy it.
There you go.
Yep. It must be really fun to be a part of that. First and foremost, people who've read any of these magazines, they're not boring in any sense of the word. They're very professional. They're a lot of fun.
They're
You can-
attractive.
They
Yeah.
are. It's not like just grabbing, the old circular off of the grocery store counter on your way home.
Home
that
and Gardens,
no one ever.
pick up your shit. Come on.
Well, what's it like to be a part of that creative process behind a magazine?
I think it's pain in the ass most of the times because it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun too. I think, our whole reputation has been built on that brand of creative and fun and quick hitting. We always call it ADD compatible content. So we don't stick to your normal narratives and 2,000 word features and stuff like that. We have a team of great designers and photographers that make it aesthetically really pleasing, and then our editors are fantastic and really got their nose on the ground to kind of feature some of the all the local things. The first time I ever met JJ, in fact, was we did a comedy issue of FM Spotlight magazine.
I remember that.
Yeah, and this was probably one of the more creative photo shoots that I would think that we've done. Well, do you want to describe what you guys did?
Yeah, we it was for the line benders, and we brought in these mini trampolines, and then we took some of the springs out of mine, so it looked like my tramp was just going to the ground. And then Phil, Natalie, and Britta were jumping as well. And then we brought props and stuff as well. So I've got one where I've got a big bow tie on, which is funny because maybe the week after that, there was an episode of the show 30 Rock where they're talking about these comedy photo shoots, and they're like, do not accept like the stuff where they're like, you're going to sit on a toilet and here's a rubber chicken. And I was like, oh, okay. Well,
Thank God that was in the week before the shoot.
Right. And since then, I've been very fortunate and very lucky. You guys have kept bringing me back for all sorts
sure.
of stuff. Eventually, you're going to find out I'm a fraud. But I pick up your publications every single week. I know you guys today, the day we're recording this, you're going to be all over seats at the Dome, right?
We put 18,000 magazines on every seat in the Fargo Dome for the Bison game this weekend. So we were there all day yesterday, climbing up and down those stairs, but it looks pretty cool.
And you've got a unique approach to the advertising side of things, where you allow companies to co-op together. I know, like the Arts Partnership puts together an ad. Their current one looks really neat. It's like a football field filled
cool.
with all the different artists. But it's different. You're not just putting the same thing in month after month. It's fun. I mean, it's a weird way to say, and I'm sure you've heard this from other people, but like, print is dying, but it's not. How many issues of Fargo Monthly do you guys put out?
So pretty much all of our magazines, we do 12 issues a year. So every month. And we're printing anywhere 20 to 30,000 a month usually.
That is an insane amount.
Yeah, it's funny. We hear all the time that print is dead. How do you guys survive? And I think, I think content is more alive and demanding than it's ever been. I think you guys know how important content is. If you have the good content, people will come to your podcast, people will come to your website, people will come to your magazine. It's also funny that we, watch a lot of industry reports and trends and stuff like that. And direct mailing, like from the USPS, is going up because digitally people are getting so saturated that everybody's just kind of going back to at least, when you mail something or when you put it in the hands, they're at least getting one touch point with it.
Yeah, your house doesn't have a spam folder.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
To put everything in.
Yeah.
I wonder if that'll ever be a service that you can pay for.
Oh man.
Ooh. And where does that start? Like someone collects your mail for you and then brings it to your house?
Right. I think a lot of the sentiment about print being dead is actually really more a reaction to the lack of professional journalism that is happening in most regional newspapers, right? So like, smaller markets will just take in stories from outside, or they'll have a news staff, but they don't have the budget to do anything really in depth.
Yep.
And the quality of the content of those things were being diluted and were being made less desirable. And so people took it as, well, it's because it's in print, not in where it could be digitally. And I think you're absolutely right that people will gravitate to good content
For sure.
regardless of where it's at, as long as getting to it isn't expensive, right? Which obviously your magazines are not.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I think you really nailed it. All of our content is produced in-house. All of our photos, designs, we don't contract out. We even get tons of article pitches and submissions from people like from national, like our Design and Living magazine, our home magazine. We get so many from like Sherwin-Williams, like, this is the paint color of the year. Let us pay you to do a story on it. And we're like, no, that's not going to be like, it's not relevant local content. It has to be 100% niche local content. I think if you know your niche and you know your audience, then you're going to be really successful. I think the other thing that really differentiates ourselves is that our sales department is almost more of a marketing department. So I would say well over half of the ads that are in there, we're also doing the photography, the design. We're helping them with their marketing campaign. So a lot of the small businesses, they should advertise, but they don't know what to do or have the capabilities of designing or getting good photos.
Can you talk about banner blindness a little bit and how that might play into your strategy? People may not have heard that term, but it's actually pretty important.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm assuming you're just talking about like on digital primarily.
I mean, digital is one, but I think the effect is all over the place. Like if you have a magazine or newspaper where you lump all the advertisements together on one page, someone just goes, a bunch of ads. They just don't even look at it. But
for sure.
It's certainly a term of art for
sure.
the digital era.
I can't tell you how many conversations we've had with advertisers that just want to cram all this crap in there, and like you get like a quarter page and they're like you're just like, we got to advertise our hours, we got to advertise our website, we got to advertise every single service and product that we offer. And they're like, if you just made it like a clean white ad that had like 5 words on it, that's probably going to be the most viewed ad in there. So, I think it is really like, it's again about that oversaturation, that if you know your niche and can really summarize your brand and your product in a very succinct way, I think, that's where you're going to have the most success.
One of the best line benders ad campaigns we did was we were down in St. George, Utah, and we found out the kid who was supposed to be putting up posters for us for the last 3 weeks did not do anything. So we show up there and all of a sudden we need to fill Jazzy something or others, whatever the place is called. And so the young man on our team who happens to be in marketing said, listen, let's go over to this Kinko's. So we go to this copy shop, and he designed an ad that said, throw this ad away. And it was a half piece of paper. And he goes, oh, okay, we've got your attention now. And then just the information about the show. So we Xerox out a bunch of these things, and then he takes them, cuts them in half. And he goes, now kind of crumple up a bunch of them. So it looks like this has maybe already been thrown away, and then flatten it out. And we'd be handing it out, and maybe every third person we handed it to stopped and like actually looked and read the whole thing, and then like turned back and kind of laughed and would show us the ad. We're like, damn, we're really getting somewhere on this.
I used to have business cards that just said, hello, how are you, in massive letters on one side, and the other side was just my email address. And that was it.
That's genius.
I mean, I haven't used business cards for a long time, but at the time when I would hand it to people, they would actually remark like, oh, that's kind of, it stood out to them because it didn't look like all the other ones that they were dealing with.
Well, in 2018, like, people are used to crap. Like, you got to provide something else besides crap.
Yeah.
We haven't learned that lesson yet on JJ Meets World, but we're working towards it.
I think you guys are good.
Eventually.
I mean, you got to deal with that all the time at your day job.
Oh yeah, at
clients.
the radio, and it because they want to squeeze information in there because they think the person needs that information, and I try and argue with them that this is the day and age of Google. So if someone needs to know your hours, they don't need to find out in this 30-second ad. What we want them to seek you out in another medium. We want you to be excited and go, oh, we gotta check out their Yelp page. We gotta check out their Facebook presence. And so our job is just simply brand recognition and getting that over and over and over again so that you can understand it. Now, the smart companies find a way to include their brand in things that seem like it's content. And that is what really gets me excited, because I like it when folks kind of trick you a little bit. At one point during the summer, I think the Shooting Star had an ad in one of the Fargo monthlies where they took maybe like three edges, like right-hand side edges of the page. And so if you're just flipping through, you saw 3 different things in a row. And I was like, damn, that's good, because now I really noticed that.
For sure. It's our events calendar, so it makes total sense because you're already going there to see what sort of events are going on, and then they're advertising their events that are going on at their casino. So it's that organic reach, And I think we deal with this all the time too, is we I mean, we'll take your money no matter what, but I mean, we don't if you're like a small business, like you're own a small mom and pop restaurant or something like that, what we tell you is, all right, you can buy an ad for 1 month, like maybe that's in your marketing budget, in one magazine. And we're like, well, that's not going to do a whole lot of good for you. I think the print that we're doing is the same with the radio. It's part of that branding strategy. Like, you got to be what's the saying? You got to be marketing in multiple ways on multiple days.
And mom and pops who've maybe been in existence for 30 years, this is easily the most difficult time it's ever been to be your own media manager.
Oh, for sure.
Because there are so many options that people are going for right now. If you don't understand what Facebook is, if you don't have, if you're updating your Twitter account once every 4 months, and
I've worked in media for 12 years and I have trouble keeping up sometimes.
Yeah, it's tough.
There will be like, oh wait, what, Instagram TV now? What is?
Yeah, what is that? Yeah.
What is going on? And then there's at some point it's gonna be like, Ask Jeeves is back. Why is that back? And why is it a downloadable app?
Yeah.
And why is it popular?
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up, man. The industry gets disrupted by technology quicker and quicker and faster and faster and faster.
For sure.
And there are still, I think, diehards out there who say, I have advertised in the yellow pages for 35 years. I'm going to continue to advertise in the yellow
But
pages.
TV advertising has been gutted.
Yeah.
Absolutely gutted, because they cannot provide the kind of analytics that the internet can. Right? So you know, if, I learned this in a previous job where we had a national TV show and we were trying to sell ads on it, and we were trying to set a high, what we thought was a good price, and we found out that people were buying bulk ads for like next to nothing, because all the TV station all the network could say was, well, we have a Nielsen rating that shows that roughly this many households tune in at this time. That can't tell you engagement. That can't tell you how many people are in the room. That can't tell you if the moment they saw your ad, they then went and bought your product. But in the digital realm, you can get down to the atoms, like just granular detail.
Crazy. It's creepy. We just use enacted a new ad server on our websites to run ads, across all of our 6 websites or whatever we have. And you can see, look into the analytics, and you can see what network carrier the person had that was looking at it on their phone, where they were at, like the IP address. It's just ridiculous. And I think, really it's all about the distribution, I think, is really the tough point. So for example, out of our main magazines, Fargo Inc. is our business magazine. It's a B2B pub that we direct mail to 7,500 businesses in town here. In January, I think we're going to mail to every business with 4 or more employees in the state of North Dakota, which is like 4,000 or 13,000. So we that I think we see as like our biggest growth potential, because that you at least know your distribution and who is getting the magazine. I mean, to be quite honest with you, probably our most from an audience perspective, Fargo Monthly is our most well-known, just because it's the most generic kind of city pub. But from an advertising perspective, it's the hardest one to sell, because we're competing with Facebook, every radio station out there, Yelp. We're competing with all of these mainstream networks that are trying to reach the consumer. So that's why we see like our Fargo Inc., our business magazine, that's getting direct mail. There are Design and Living that we mail to affluent areas in the neighborhood, affluent neighborhoods in town, or country club members. We can guarantee who is getting that magazine.
So let me ask you about some of the content you guys are putting in here. Do you have a story that really sticks out to you over the years, or maybe something you started? I know for a while the burger competition in the magazine itself was, I mean, that must have been a jewel in the crown.
For sure. So, kind of using that, the burger. So several years ago, Fargo Monthly used to do a best burger award. A really tough month. You just go around and eat burgers. It was awful. But what we kind of always tell our staff and to whoever listens, I guess, which isn't many people, but we tell people that we're in the brand business. And so what I mean by that is so Fargo Monthly, for instance, at the center of our Fargo Monthly is the Fargo Monthly audience, which is, like the 25 to 45-year-old active lifestyle people. And then we have all these different ways that we can reach that audience. So using that burger story, for example, we had a nomination and voting platform on our website. We were obviously publishing that through our social media channels, carried that into our print piece to show the winners, also carried that on our website. So it was reaching all these different, that kind of key core audience with all these different ways to interact with them and get them that content. And then eventually we launched a couple of years ago a Burgers, Brews, and Barbecue Festival that we did last year at the Moorhead Center Mall parking ramp. So we had about 1,000 people, 20 restaurants, 15 breweries. And, it was just another way to kind of interact with our audience and to get them the content of burgers.
What amazes me the most is how you guys you're not just publishing. Like, that's not just what it is you've started to get into that event arena. I loved your burger festival. The first year was up at the Great Northern?
Yep.
Right? And then at one point it was where the Red River Market used to be, and you closed down a chunk of the street.
Yep.
And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. 2 years now in the Moorhead Center Mall parking lot, which, by the way, is probably the biggest influx of people that they see during the entire year.
Yeah, 100%.
And what's unique to me is you guys took a parking garage and you turned it into an amazing space where people congregated. It's big. It's open air. You've got groups like the Barbecue Boot Camp folks out there. You've got all these restaurants. It must be great to be setting the pace for other community-based events with something like that.
Yeah, I think, for that Burger Fest, for example, it was really exciting to, we knew that this event was growing and we wanted to in a perfect world, we'd turn it into like a Fargo food festival where you got all along Broadway, you close down. It's like the downtown festival in the summer, the street fair, there it is. But in a perfect world, we'd love to close down that. And we're looking around and trying to figure out okay, well, we want it to be outdoors, but we don't want it to be a generic parking lot. We could go to Bluestem, but then you're kind of losing that downtown vibe. So, we were just driving around and we're like, oh shit, nobody uses this. Let's use it. But I think it's exciting because I think the more, success begets success. So you see lots of competitors, which I think, it's tough for you, but I think it's good for everybody else in the community. And you kind of see I just walked over from the Red River Market and what they're doing every weekend is awesome and how many people they're bringing. I just got my pet portrait done over there with my dog. So I got a huge kudos to them and everybody else that's doing just really weird and kind of fun, exciting things.
And when I graduated from Fargo South High in 2002. And I remember thinking, I got to get the hell out of this town. This place is one horse. It's the worst. Yeah. I ended up staying in Fargo, and my eyes were kind of open to, there's kind of a neat scene going on. And the coffee shop scene was just starting to kind of get big. Do you remember the Trentino? Did you go to the Trentino when you were younger? And Fargo is becoming a more and more happening place all the time. I think a lot of people assume they need to go somewhere else if they want to be successful, whether a photographer or a writer or a podcaster even. And that's just not the case anymore. People can stay in Fargo and be able to have an international reach right here from our own hometown. Yeah. Or at least my hometown. So as the world gets bigger, what do you want to see come to Fargo that we don't have already? What should we be insourcing to Fargo other than an Outback Steakhouse? Yeah. Which, by the way, would be a great idea.
Well, I'm excited that there's more breakfast places coming. Talking about that Waffle Bar. But, I think I was talking to interviewed Jessica Thomason, with Lutheran Social Services a couple years ago for a story. And, we're talking about, obviously, the, more and more new Americans are coming to Fargo. And she said a good quote that went something along the lines of, this is the first time that, native Fargoans are seeing the world step out of the TV and step into the grocery store with them. So I think this, influx of different cultures and personalities that are coming into the community are really exciting. I just had a squash soup from a Caribbean restaurant in town that was delicious. We just hired a new Fargo Monthly editor. She's from Alabama. So, I think it's just fun to see all these new cultures and new personalities kind of popping up in the influx of what they bring to it. I came here in 2007 for college and didn't really get involved in the community because I was planning on leaving too until I started interning with the magazines and started to see everything that was going on. So it's been kind of fun over the last decade because I feel like there has been a big transformation. And I think it's also exciting that, I don't know, maybe this is just my perspective or maybe it's the truth. I have no idea, but it seemed like for a long time, Fargo was kind of old boys club. It was kind of the same people, same families that created everything. So I think, it probably sucks for them, but I think it's good for everybody else that there's this new influx of people.
Absolutely.
Coming. It's nice to be challenged a little bit too.
For sure. Yeah.
You can't name everything after the same family.
Yeah. Right.
I remember when my grandfather was a successful business person in Fargo. He told me, he's like, you need to reinvest in your community. He goes, you're not a success until you start reinvesting in that community. And so he put a real sense of, civic duty into, I think, all of the grandkids. And so we know, it is important. You've got to sit on boards and you've got to do whatever you can to help. And I like that some of the old school fundraising is kind of becoming cyclical. You're not going to the same event every single year.
Yep.
Boy, I don't know what it must be like to run a nonprofit these days, but there are more nonprofits than I have ever seen in this community, and they're all vying after the same money.
Yep.
And I find that the best nonprofits are the ones who say we're not going to rest on our laurels. We're not going to allow ourselves to get stale and stagnant. We're going to constantly do new things and reinvent ourselves. And I think a lot of the media entities have to do the same thing.
Oh, for sure.
I
think every business has to do the same thing.
It should, right? I mean, if you're doing the same business you were 75 years ago right now, first of all, they're called copy machines. You don't have to use mimeograph anymore. But it's nice. And I like when the older generation hands it over to the younger generation and they can freshen things up and have a new perspective.
For sure.
But at the same time, I also think, too, it would be nice if we allowed other businesses to start up. There's some real chokeholds on some industries in our city that you have to kind of open it up a little bit and let other people get a piece of it. And then there are pioneers. There are people who take a chance. Before you arrived here in 2007, during Tucker and I's time when we were in high school, you didn't come to downtown Fargo. This was actually an unsafe place to be, and barely any businesses. I mean, there were maybe a couple holdouts from the 50s and 60s, but this just wasn't a place. Do you remember coming downtown as a kid at all?
I actually did, because my friend Mike Grayton lived downtown, but I only went down like during the day, like during the daytime you were fine. But yeah, at night it was just it was run down and there wasn't really anything to see up and down the street. Another thing I was thinking too, though, is that when you have a community that just has entrenched groups with a chokehold on something, it's the consumer that ends up paying the price for it. If there's no competition, then that purveyor of goods isn't necessarily incentivized to provide the same level of service that they might be if they're selling shoes and there's a shoe shop down the road that they have to compete with.
Yeah, for sure. I think, another aspect of that, the competition and new influx of people and businesses is, I think Fargo, North Dakota's biggest problem is workforce, having the people to work. And I don't want to live in a spot that doesn't have, options and different things and unique happenings and cool coffee shops or art scene or, fun buys and games. I think that's going to be a really important aspect of North Dakota in general if it's going to attract the people it needs.
I sometimes feel bad for people who said, I got to get out of here and left in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And they haven't had a reason to come back, because when some of those folks do come back, they're like, whoa, take like a Bison game, for instance. In 2004, you could not give away a ticket to a Bison game.
Yeah.
They were, I think at that time, they were probably still playing outside at the field house at that point.
They weren't at the Dome.
They weren't at the Dome yet. But I mean, places would beg you to go to a Bison game, and you'd go and there'd be maybe, like a handful of people there. It was mainly just student based, and even at that, it wasn't great.
Yeah.
Today, if I told myself I'd like to go to a Bison game, I'd be like, okay, well, let's start planning for
like
2022.
Yeah, right.
It is.
Yeah.
And if you know someone who's got season tickets, they are your best
yes,
friend.
they are. Yeah.
So, and that is a change. That's a change that has taken place in our community, and that has increased the value of things in North Fargo. Do you think Applebee's would have opened a restaurant there if they didn't know that there was a giant influx of people during game times?
Sure.
And I mean, that's corporate America. I always think, first and foremost, I would go wherever Hornbacher's goes, because I don't think I've ever heard of a Hornbacher's closing.
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean,
That's a good point.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
So
correct.
you always know that when Hornbacher's invest in an area, like that place is
They
going to
know.
make it.
Yeah.
And I also think that if you watch the trends of some of these big businesses coming in, for a long time we were told, Champs is going to come to Fargo. We're going to get a Champs. Shh, shh, shh. And it was always going to be in downtown Fargo.
Yeah.
And you had people who said, no. A chain restaurant in downtown Fargo, that's the worst thing ever. And I think, well, I mean, it's nice to have local restaurants, but a chain restaurant's not a bad thing either.
Remember when we got Krispy Kreme?
Yep.
That was
And-
a huge deal.
Do you remember the people who camped out for Krispy Kreme's
Yeah, some
opening?
of them were my
Really?
friends.
Yep.
Wow.
Mhm. I brought over my couch.
Is there a Krispy Kreme location anymore in town?
No.
No. It's you go to gas stations to get a Krispy Kreme, I think.
Mm-hmm. And who knows where those are coming from?
Yeah, is Krispy? They're still like around, right?
Yeah, I
believe
think
so.
so,
I
right?
believe so.
I think Krispy Kreme had the same problem that McDonald's had, which is they were so focused on opening new stores that the quality of the stores were going down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I was reading in Forbes in maybe like 2010, they shuttered a bunch of McDonald's locations and they said, we're going to focus on getting the best people and having the best service, and we're going to start that by having the best restrooms. And so there was this company-wide push.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, to improve their restrooms because people were coming off the road and you knew that there'd be a clean, welcoming bathroom. And then if they bought a cheeseburger while they're there, all the better.
We're concerned with both ends of a person. We want to be responsible for what's going out and what's going in.
Yeah.
Right. We want you to stop and eat at this McDonald's and then you can dump out at this McDonald's down the road.
But then top up.
Okay, so we're going to take a hard right now.
All right.
Okay.
Perfect.
What fast food place do you go to if you're forced to go to a fast food place? Are you a person who eats fast food on the regular?
You know,
You don't look like it.
I hate to
no.
say it, but I'm not. My wife is a dietitian, so she keeps
Hate
me
to
pretty.
say it, but you
Snap.
Yeah, right.
I hate to say it, but I don't have that vice.
But I mean, I love the fast casual, like a Chipotle or
Yeah.
a Qdoba. Those are my jams.
So you like a burrito?
I love me a burrito. Yes.
Okay. What are you putting in your burrito?
Oh man.
burritos
Anything
now.
spicy. Anything meat. I whatever. I'm kind
Spicy
of open up.
meat?
Yeah, spicy meat. Ideally, in a perfect world. Also love a breakfast burrito. Every Sunday before church when I was growing up, my dad would take me to McDonald's and get me a breakfast burrito and their hash browns. Still love McDonald's burritos and hash browns.
Really?
Yes.
Well, that's growing up in my household, we were not a McDonald's breakfast household. We were a Burger King breakfast household.
Really?
So on your birthday, that was your treat. Is
It's
you
like
would
eating
go,
Hydrox.
Oh no, the croissant sandwich, in my opinion, is much better than anything McDonald's has to offer. Much better.
For my high school graduation, my dad was friends with the guy who owned the Burger Kings in Bemidji. So for my high school graduation party meal, we got all of their quarter pounders and chicken breasts from Burger King. So Burger King also holds a special place in my heart.
Oh, that flame broiled taste.
Yes,
the
thank you,
delicious
Milo.
flame
That
broiled.
nice chemical combination they came out with that makes it taste like it was made with love.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Every year, the Christmas gift, which Dan Michaels has run for so many years, does gift burgers on the plaza, and usually it's out at the U.S. Bank Plaza. And now, of course, that no longer exists. It'll soon become the what's
I
the
think
name?
Kilborn's putting a Thunderdome in there.
Yeah,
I think is what it
that's
is.
what I was
That's
thinking.
how-
Is some kind of a coliseum.
Yeah.
So
Gladiatorial conversation.
they moved it down to the green space in front of the Fargo Civic Center.
Oh, yeah.
But McDonald's provides the burgers for that. And then the fire department grills the burgers, and then the women ogle the fire department grilling the McDonald's burgers.
Everybody wins.
But I remember asking him once, being like, why do you keep the McDonald's burgers out here? I mean, no offense, but people have come to expect a little bit more from that. And he goes, McDonald's has been a very loyal partner in this for so many years. I tried to get Real Burger when we started, and I was turned down by meat market after meat market. The grocery stores wouldn't get it. McDonald's hopped to the opportunity. He goes, and because of that, I will be loyal to McDonald's forever.
That must be though because they're doing it at scale. I mean, they can afford.
Sure.
You know, they can afford to do it because meat's expensive. Real meat's expensive.
yeah.
If you grill 1,000 burgers, you're only talking about actually 10 pounds of ground beef, and the rest is sawdust.
Yeah.
Delicious
Delicious sawdust.
I like to rag on McDonald's, but I do. In fact, Tucker and I have been dreaming about lunch already today. Maybe that's where we'll end up. I don't know.
There you go.
Whatever can just get the most sodium into my heart. That's what I want. That's really what I want today.
So with a wife who's a dietitian,
Yes.
what kind of things, if we were to open the cabinets in your kitchen, what would we find?
Oh man, a lot of beans, a lot of pasta because she never cooks with pasta.
It just accumulates?
Just sits there.
Yeah, honestly, I think we follow the perimeter rule at the restaurant or at the grocery store.
This is the second podcast we've recorded today with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So yeah, you just stick around the perimeter, the dairies, the fruits and vegetables, the meat, and you just kind of go in and get your cereal and all the other sugary deliciousness you need.
See, the trick then is we got to open ourselves a grocery store where we put all that stuff in the center of it and then put all the stuff that we get the higher markup on the outside. Where there's got to be at least a 2-year window where people are going to get confused and start buying the wrong stuff.
I have been trying to get a guest on my day job show for about 2 months who spent 20 years researching grocery habits of consumers.
Oh, wow.
And has put together what she considers to be the perfect grocery store layout. And the layout is all about pretty much trapping people inside. And so, yeah, I'm looking at the cover of this Fargo Monthly, and there's like a diamond, and she goes, it should be diamond shape. And so you kind of have to go to the center to be able to get to the cashiers. So it brings you up and funnels you down like a bottle.
Oh,
and she goes,
genius.
We have done this in 20, 30 other markets, and they see astronomical upticks in purchases.
Wow.
And I was like, what?
Wow.
That sounds friggin' awesome. And she also said, too, that if you have an entire freezer section that's devoted to frozen pizza, those grocery stores do much better than the other grocery stores.
It makes sense because Hornbachers has an entire
It's
aisle.
insane, like how many different choices there are for frozen pizza.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember when I was younger, maybe you guys too, there were not a lot of frozen pizza choices.
I miss Moose Brothers.
I don't think I ever
I
tried
don't
it.
know if I've heard of that.
If I can't remember if it was actually frozen or if it was just cooled but not frozen. But it was a brand that was up here. You can only now get it in like this small town in South Dakota. Like, I don't know what happened to the brand, if it imploded or got bought or what, but Moose Brothers Pizza, I can still taste it like right now. No other pizza tastes like it. And I wish I could describe it to you because I can't. It's just a different pizza taste. But I used to get that on Friday nights when we'd go and rent a movie and then get some Moose Brothers Pizza.
Was there anything better than Friday night going to like the Blockbuster and getting a frozen pizza and like pizza rolls and
In fact, I wish I did that last night. But
I am so nostalgic for video stores that I have made a small list of them in the vicinity. And
do we still have any?
Yeah, Wapaton has a brick and mortar video store
Really?
that is also a deli. And I've been told that the sandwiches are out of this world. But when I go there, I do the same thing I did when I was 12 years old, which is walk the aisles and look at the case art and be like, I didn't know that this thing existed.
sneak into the XXX rating. And
Right,
section
exactly.
and
Be like,
Halloweeny.
what? There's one Blockbuster left out in Oregon.
Did wasn't there one in Alaska
There's
too?
Alaska closed.
Oh,
The one in Texas
RIP.
closed. The one in Oregon still operates as a Blockbuster, all the things that you loved. But recently somebody started brewing like Last Blockbuster beer. And so now you can also buy beer inside of it as well. But that is something that I am very nostalgic for. I worked at a video store for 3 years, almost 4 years. And there's nothing I love more than walking through a video store.
For sure.
It's
Great. Because I grew up like so far in the country, like I live like 25 miles from the nearest town. We didn't have cable or satellite, or I didn't have internet till I was a senior in high school. So I lived off of like Blockbuster, and it was just my favorite thing in the world. And the video games too, like
Oh, yeah.
I remember my dad got in trouble big time from my mom because he rented me Devil May Cry, and she was like, "What is this game that has devil in it?"
Were you ever censored for anything as a kid? Like, I mean, if your mom cared about the word devil in that, was there ever anything where you're like, no, Andrew, you're not allowed to have this?
Yeah. I think my mom would say yes. My dad would say no. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're pretty whatever about things. I was a goody two-shoe boy in high school and growing up, and then college. Watch out, world. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, nothing too crazy.
I remember my mother barging into my room while I was listening to Adam Sandler's "They're All Gonna Laugh at You" album.
Yeah.
And actually taking the CD out of the boombox and breaking it.
Oh, wow.
Which takes a lot to break a
Yeah.
CD when you really think about it. And she threw it in the garbage. And she goes, absolutely not. You're not allowed to listen to this. So I had to wait 2 more weeks to save up enough allowance to go back to Media Play and buy a cassette version of it because my cassette player had a headphone jack.
Oh, your CD player didn't.
No, it did not.
Really?
Oh, it took like 15D batteries.
Wow.
You could probably listen to 25 minutes before it went dead.
Do you remember your first CD you ever bought with your own money?
I do. Chipmunks in Low Places, which was the Chipmunks teaming up with country music legends of the time to sing that country music's musicians' hits. So, for example, Simon there's a song called "Ain't Nothing Wrong with the Radio," and Aaron Tippin sang it. And it's about his beat up truck, but there ain't nothing wrong with it. And so Simon insists on saying, "But there is not anything wrong," because he wanted to be grammatically correct.
Mine was the soundtrack to Batman Forever because "Kiss from a Rose" was on the radio, and I was really into Light Rock 105 at the time.
Yeah.
And Batman.
I wonder if Seal knows how many albums he really moved for the Batman soundtrack, because I bought the same thing.
Crazy amount. Crazy amount.
Do you remember singles? Did either of you ever buy any singles for anything? I think I bought the single to Tub Thumpin', Chumbawamba's Tub Thumpin'. And then I remember thinking like, okay, well, the album is $12 and this is $5. Well, I just buy
Doesn't
the
add up.
album.
Yeah, right?
You know.
But at least I'll have something to talk about at a TEDx in the future.
I know.
There you
And
go.
then Chumbawamba just retweeted me.
Can I ask
Yep.
you a question?
You can. No one ever does.
Another take a right turn on this one. So I'm part of the Creative Morning board, and I don't want to take credit for it, but I'm pretty sure I was the one that nominated you to speak this Friday.
Oh,
so
that's exciting.
I guess, can you give a little preview of what you'll be chatting about?
Yeah.
And of course, this episode may or may not come out before then.
Yeah, you may be able to watch this whole thing by that point. It'll be amazing.
We're pretty far behind on the video, so you probably won't be able to.
So the subject was honesty. And honesty is something that people, in my opinion, take for granted because they think they're being honest, but really they're being manipulative with honesty. So they'll say things like, listen, I'm so sorry. You're going to just hate me, but I was doing this. And they'll lay out what they were doing, thinking they're being honest about it, when in all honesty, they're not sorry.
They're making their case and they're prepping the
Yeah.
environment
Yep.
for them to be forgiven before they even told you what the thing was.
And so I dig into that a little bit. I dig into the honesty of my life, and being honest with yourself, I think, is one of the most important things that you can do for people.
Yeah.
In a world where people are having anxiety attacks left and right, they're not being honest with themselves by what should I be taking on as far as a workload? What should I be taking on as far as an emotional load from other people around me? And so if you shortchange that honesty with yourself, it hurts. I also have prizes that I'm going to give away. I think I'm going to do an Oprah style and hide a bunch of stuff under people's seats. So I bought 2 rolls of duct tape for it. But it should be a lot of fun. And then most recently in my last year, last January, I went to the doctor for my annual physical, and they did blood work, and they said, "You're pre-diabetic." And I said, "Oh, well, that's horrible. I don't like the sound of that." And I was talking about this on air, ended up getting an endorsement deal with Jenny Craig where they provided me with this food. And now I'm 50 pounds lighter than I was
congrats.
in January of last year. Thank you very much. I still have a long way to go to being able to jog down the street. So,
But who would want to? That's the thing, and I'm so sorry to put you on the spot here. My first thought in my head is anytime I see someone outdoors running, my first thought is, what are you doing? There's TV. Like, why are you not at home resting your body and just watching stuff?
Well, I'm actually a recovered marathon runner, so I've done several marathons. So Yeah, I mean, jogging 3 miles is way better than a marathon.
I'm sure. But you know what's better than jogging 3 miles?
Watching TV.
You going onto YouTube and eating some pizza? That's even better.
So how'd you get into running marathons?
Well, let me tell you a story here. So I got into it in college. One of my good friends in college, we just started running. I was never much of a runner. So I ran my first marathon, the Fargo Marathon, when I was 21. And that was in May, right after my 21st birthday. And then in October, I actually had to have open heart surgery. So
Oh my God.
I had my aortic valve replaced. And then I was like, well, screw this. I got a new heart. So let's put this baby to the test. So then I ran 2 more marathons off of that. And then eventually my cardiologists were like, you might want to stop running marathons. I was like, okay, yeah, that's fair. So then I stopped.
So what did they replace your valve with? Is it like a pig's valve?
It's a titanium nickel.
Whoa!
Yeah, I know. I just had my appointment with my cardiologist on Thursday, like 2 days ago, and I was asking what it was, and he was telling me it was like a titanium nickel alloy thing. It sounded like a very superhero kind of thing.
Does it cause you any problems when you're going through security in an airport?
It does not, but when me and my wife first started dating, it does like sound like a clock because it's actual like ticking. So like she like will wake up and be like, "What's that noise? Where's that clock at?" So
imagine if you got into that room where they've blocked out 99.9% of all other sound, where you can hear, you know that?
Oh,
they
that would
say
drive me
like
crazy.
after 10 minutes, people go just mad because
Right.
you hear your intestines gurgling and stuff. You'd be able to just set your watch to the.
Right. Well, I joke because when you like, I don't notice anymore, but when I first had it done, it sounded like that Edgar Allan Poe, The Telltale Heart. You just hear like the clicking, and you're just lying in bed like, oh my God, it just keeps ticking and beating. So
Does it click faster if you're in?
I mean, it
adrenaline's
ticks,
running?
Yeah,
or-
I mean, it ticks to the same beat of your heart. So if your heart rate's up, it'll obviously tick faster. So, and actually, last month's Creative Morning speaker was Dr. Roxanne Newman, who's a heart surgeon that did my heart surgery. So you got to top her.
So you're pretty much stacking the deck with just people
much,
who
yeah.
are in here, your lives
Yeah.
already. Next week, it's going to be the garbage collection agent.
This is my butcher.
Actually, the following month, there'll be Jesse Horlbeck, who does J. Allen Paul photography, who does a lot of our photography for our magazines.
Yeah,
So-
and top quality stuff at that.
Yes, he used to be a professional baseball player.
What?
And his dad is the lead singer of Rare Earth, the I Just Want to
Yeah.
Celebrate. So,
What?
yeah. So, there you go. You have to
That's an
tune in next
interesting
month.
story.
Wow.
That is a very interesting
I
story.
gotta poach these guys.
I know. So what are you guys going to be doing at Fargo Monthly podcast-wise?
Well, I think, so we have been doing our Bison Illustrated podcast for a long time. Well, I guess probably about as long as you guys have been doing it. So, not a long time.
How can
So
people
since
find
April?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. So it's just Bison Illustrated. We're on SoundCloud and iTunes. So you can just obviously subscribe to that way. We've toyed around with what we want to do a podcast for. We're doing some video series for our business magazine. I'm personally a podcast junkie, so I would love to launch a business podcast for Fargo Inc. and just kind of do, we're already doing all these stories. So for our November Fargo Inc. that's coming up, we interviewed Gary Tharaldson, richest man in North Dakota.
Yep.
So had a super interesting conversation. Would have made a great podcast. So, we'll see what happens. I mean, it all comes around to the, we're obviously busy producing magazines and our website content. So if we have the time, and then too, if we can monetize that, because I'm sure you guys know the struggle of monetizing podcasts.
Well, for 5 easy payments of $200,000,
Yeah.
you could have your very own JJ Meets World podcast in house.
That's right, because we're also on Spotify, so no big deal. or anything like
Radio, the Google Play Store, we're on YouTube.
You guys
we're
are a
on
big deal.
Stitcher.
Yeah. We've been
soon to
told-
be on TuneIn.
We've been told you can find us on Netscape Navigator if you travel back in time to 1997. I love the podcast style.
Oh, for sure.
And whether you approach it like we do, which is a long form conversation, or if you approach it as segmented pieces and it's like listening to a radio program, you just get to consume it when you want to consume it. I'm a huge, huge fan of that. And the more that we can get it going, I think the better, because people like this, and you don't have to have a visual associated with it, so you can be doing other things and consuming that medium.
I think that's podcast's real strength is that it's the only
Right up on
medium.
top of that.
Oh, sorry. I think that's podcast's real strength is that it's the only medium where you don't have to be actively like involved. You can be multitasking,
You don't have
like
to use
going
your
for a
eyes.
jog.
Don't have to
Yeah.
use your eyes.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Like, you can't read a book and mow the lawn very easily.
No. Yeah.
At least most people can't.
Yeah,
I mean,
very easily. I didn't
Toro's
say it was
got-
impossible.
Toro's got a lot of open litigation right now for their reader series. Do you ever listen to, like, tell us some of the podcasts you like to listen to?
So, JJ Meets World, first of all.
I appreciate
Ooh.
that. Yep.
I love Stuff You Should Know.
Mm-hmm.
This American Life, obviously. Serial. I don't know if I want to publicly admit this one, but I think the funniest podcast out there, even maybe funnier than JJ Meets World, it's called My Dad Wrote a Porno. It's
Heard
about
of that one.
It's about these three Brits, and one of his dad wrote a erotic novel, and so
Hilarious.
it's him and then a woman and then their friend, and they just like read the novel and like comment on it, and it's got they just said that they have over 150 million downloads on it, and they're doing live shows. There's going to be an HBO special coming, so
Cool.
I recommend throwing and subscribe. I've never laughed so hard.
Previous guest Mikey Sunrum was telling me about a podcast he's addicted to out of the Twin Cities about these three women who get together and drink wine and then
Oh,
go
my
over
wife listens
like
to that.
court
My
cases or
Favorite Murder?
something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's they like they do like I think I listened to one with her. It was about arson, and they had like they were drinking a wine that was like fire red or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, so
We'll have to get to that. We've got big plans for JJ Meets World involving food and drinking that we want to do.
Ooh.
We want to launch a brunch podcast that is a group of people having a conversation.
oh, that's a great idea.
Because I've been kicked out of many restaurants for sitting around too long after brunch chatting. And we also want to do one called Nightcap where you pull everyone out of the bar and you bring them back here.
Basically,
and
just
you see what
record
happens.
JJ Meets World after
At-
bar
at 2
close.
a.m., yeah.
with more booze.
Yeah, exactly. There'd be another little section of the studio where we'd put a little drink cart.
I was thinking I should like have gone and went and got a Bloody Mary before I came here, just to loosen these nerves.
But I mean, it's pretty. You're a first time guest. How
Yeah.
how did it feel? Was it welcoming?
It was very welcome. You guys are professionals.
You brought your own coffee, thank goodness. So
I
we didn't
did,
have to
yes.
offer you.
Yes.
We usually steal it from the coffee that someone else has made here.
I've been pretty good at bringing like a nice carafe for myself because
For
I
yourself,
for
yeah.
yourself.
I
only.
drink so much though that I need all of
Yeah.
it.
Normally we don't put out food or anything, but a previous guest brought candy as well. So we've got a little selection of candy.
We just
that
had
we're
some
giving out.
kombucha.
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 Uh huh.
Is your little shelf here? Is that all gifts from previous guests?
No,
Or is
I
that-
wish.
Oh.
This is stuff that my soon-to-be wife told me I can't keep in the house anymore. She's like, "You got too many toys." So I'm a subscriber to the Nick box, which is the Nickelodeon subscription box.
Oh, cool.
And so I end up getting all
Funny
of
because
these.
it sounds like a cigarettes thing.
Yeah, the Nick. It should be. Actually, you'd call that the teen box. Some people get really weird subscriptions. And then I bought that globe because we thought if it's JJ Meets World, we need a globe.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
For all your listeners, so they can tell you have a globe in here.
Yep, exactly.
I'm planning a Tucker shelf. That's the JJ shelf. There is no Tucker shelf yet, but at some point I'll do that. I also have toys to put on there. No one's telling me to get rid of them, but I feel like I have to balance that out a little bit.
We have a frequent listener who has sent me 2 letters in the mail.
Wow.
Each time with a collection of $2 bills as his donation to our podcast. And his name is Bartholomew, and he's English, but is in America quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Shout out to Bartholomew.
Shout out to Bartholomew. And the first time he sent it, he calls me Trips.
Is there a story behind that?
He talks about it in the first, and I think the first card is up there somewhere. It's got little dogs on it. But the second time, this is what amazes me. So we had a guest on, Bill Brooks, and he's the Tesla guy in the
yep.
Fargo Pinball.
Yep.
And so I talk about in his Tesla episode, he's our first guest to make a second appearance. So Bartholomew writes me this letter and keeps $2 back from what he normally gives. He normally gives $20, but this time he goes 18 because you are a liar. And he noted, Bill Brooks was not the first time you had someone who was a second guest. The first time you had someone who was a second guest was Mike Rezel, because he appeared in this episode and immediately appeared in this episode after that. And I thought, whoa, that is a P1 listener. You can keep listening all you want.
Yeah. We're big fans of Bartholomew here.
Yeah. And so you're sort of like a P1 listener for us, Andrew.
Wow. I'm sorry I don't send you guys money.
Do you always go by Andrew, or do people call you Andy and I'm just being super formal all the time?
No, pretty much people always say they're going to call me Andy, but it never sticks. In high school, some people call me Andy Roo, and at like high school graduation, they were yelling Andy Roo, and my grandma thought they were saying boo, and she got super sad.
Oh, she didn't get mad at the other kids. She just got sad. She's like, I got saddled with a loser grandson. It's being booed by everybody. Does she get up and leave?
She's like,
Go
I
have a
can't
Bloody
handle
Mary?
this. Yeah, I'm out of here.
Grandma walked out of your graduation.
Yeah.
I remember I graduated with 515 people, and how many did you if you have a small town, what was your graduating class?
50, I think.
Wow. So enough where you had like a couple people that you could date.
Yeah, you weren't related.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did have some, it was the boonies, so we did have some cousins that ended up dating, but I think they were second cousins, so
Yeah, that's fine.
whatever.
Right? It's whoever you fall in love with.
Yeah. Love is love, right?
Yeah. My grandmother missed me when I was accepting my diploma. I got to MC graduation, and so she's like, "Well, I've got enough. I've seen enough.
I don't need to see the handoff.
Yeah.
I know you got the degree.
Yeah, it's fine." And it was at the Dome. We had our graduation, so did Tucker, at the Fargo Dome, and that was the biggest crowd I'd ever performed for. And I was on a jumbotron screen, and I remember thinking, like, "Well, this is the peak. I've done
it's all
it.
downhill.
It's just downhill from here."
I was the final student speaker at my graduation because I wasn't a valedictorian or anything.
Yeah.
I didn't have the grades for it, but they had a little contest that if you wanted to speak at graduation, you had to write like a little speech, and then so I did that, and a few other people did, and we had to go perform it for the administrators, and they liked my speech, and so I got in there, and then I got up on stage to say the speech, and I was the last student to talk, and it was a massive crowd, and adrenaline just surged through me, and I ended up giving the same speech, but in sort of like the cadence of Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Like
A
really,
lot of hand motions
really
out there.
loud, and I would just rah, rah, rah.
Yeah.
And when I finished, it was started like that.
I was the commencement speaker at my college graduation, so we all have like a
little
weird
connection there.
We're all part of
here.
a club.
Yeah, we should start a club.
We started having meetings.
Yeah.
Andrew, Jason, thank you so much. If people want to find you, if they want to see more of what you're doing, where should they look on the internet?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, if you're into the city, Fargo Monthly. If you're into business, Fargo Inc. If you're into homes, Design and Living. If you're into the Bison Illustrated. If you're into UND, Fighting Hawks Magazine. And if you're into Spotlight Media, SpotlightMediaFargo.com.
All right, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
JJ Meets World.
That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com, and you can find direct contact info for JJ. When I was in 7th grade, an issue of Sports Illustrated came out that had 3D glasses attached, and it was the swimsuit edition. And I remember that it was probably the most shameful periodical purchase I'd ever made, until I was old enough to buy dirty magazines. And from then on, oh man, every week I was buying dirty truck tires or filthy bathtubs all of these things that just had nothing but dirty, grimy stuff in there. Old motel room sheets. That one I subscribe to.